And I'm loving life with friends. Doing my life with friends. Doing my life with friends. Doing my life with friends. And I'm loving life with friends. Doing my life with friends. Doing my life with friends. And I'm loving life with friends.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Love&Life. I am so excited about today's conversation. Well, to be fair, I'm always excited about every conversation, but this is one that is particularly dear to my heart for many reasons because I do love. I'm getting ahead of myself. But what we're going to be addressing today is something that I've heard come up in many different spaces, which is evolving friendship into love. Now we're talking romantic love. Most of the time when you talk to people, there's this danger of the friend zone, which is a zone that you enter into with your friend, where you both sort of decide that we're too friendly now to be able to be anything more than that. And that's when you start talking about the brother zone and the sister zone. But as one of my friends will say, if my mother did not born you, you are not my brother or my sister. So, all bets are off. But anyway, I feel like it's been an area that many people have sort of struggled with. Is it possible to break out of that friend zone into anything more than that? I am definitely team yes, it's possible. Some people say, yeah, it's a bit awkward, it's a bit cringy. But today, I've brought you some people who have successfully managed to shatter the friend zone. They came out of it successfully. They've gone from meeting in primary school to, breaking through friend zone. And now they're very, very happily married. Ladies and gentlemen, I have my friends with me today, Tomi and Afoma. Yay!
Hi.
Welcome to the podcast, guys. Thank you for joining us today. And these guys are definitely some of my closest friends, and they're also my neighbors, by the way. And I met Tomi first. We were friends, and thankfully, thank you for breaking out of the friend zone and giving me a new sister because but yeah, you guys know I love your story, I love your journey, and I just think there's so much intentionality and we'll be getting into it, but I do love the way that you guys sort of approach things, as you always say to me. So I will caveat that to everyone because you say this to me all the time. We're like, Fola, we are not experts, so and yeah, I agree, but I do believe that you have a story that's worth sharing because, like I say, it's a real struggle out there. You people don't know what the Lord has done for you.
I didn't even realize it was a conversation,
Yeah,
thank God.
Yeah, no, exactly. So even to take it from there, I feel like when I started to talk to you guys about this topic, I very quickly realized that because it just wasn't your experience, you're a bit like, is this something that people struggle with? Which is quite interesting because for most other people, they're like, yeah, friend zone is a thing. I don't know if you heard that sound that went viral at some point that came out of Lion King where it was like, oh, I always wanted a brother. And everybody was using that to talk about friend zoning, oh, you're just my brother. I had the brother I always wanted. So that resonated because the friend zone is so real. And I think you probably just get so familiar with people in a sense. You're like, oh, it's just my friend. But as my mom always says, is it your enemy that you will marry before? Is it also your friend that you're going to marry? So I guess maybe where to take it from is tell us a bit about your story. And I'll actually ask Afoma to tell us the story because I feel like most times when people do this, is the guy that tells the story. So I'm going to ask Afoma to tell the story. Now, I will ask you to jump in where you feel like there's bits that you're like, no, let her just say the whole thing. But yeah, Afoma, tell us a bit about your journey and then we'll take it from there.
Yeah, so we actually met in secondary school, not primary school.
Oh, was it secondary school? Cool.
But for people that don't know the Nigerian secondary school system, we you go in when you're 10 years old, so it's 6 years, so just one, so 10 to 16. So we met in just once when we were 10. We were actually in the exact same class, so I literally remember what Toby looked like when he was 10, which is crazy. So that's how we met.
What did he look like?
Hey, stay on topic.
My bad.
I always say to him, I remember it so well because his shorts for school were so big, they look like trousers.
Not the shorts.
But that's when we met. But, I guess with life, friendships evolve, and we were friends in secondary school, but honestly, nothing really that I can say was that solid in that way. We just did what 10, 12, 15, 16-year-olds did. I would say like our friendship, we sort of reconnected when we were probably 23, 24. So definitely after university, and we had even we lost touch in uni and kind of reconnected there. And so that's sort of where the friendship started again. And we're friends for a good number of years. And it probably took him moving to the UK to, things just started to change, and it's like close proximity, and the nature of our conversation started to shift. And I guess we realized there's something a bit more there, and that's sort of how it happened. That's a summary. I'm sure we'll get into the details.
Let me jump in.
Jump in.
Because I think that, like you said it beautifully, like we were friends. Like usually when we tell people we met in like high school, they're like, have you guys been dating since then? No, we haven't, right? We're literally friends for, if we've known each other for over, let's say 10, 15 years. Right,
20 years.
20 years. Damn.
Wow.
They're trying to age.
God.
They're trying to age me.
Yikes.
We're friends for roughly like 80-90% of that. And I think that like sort of that then helped sort of the transition. So we spent so much time as friends, just understanding what each other, what we liked, what we didn't like. As a friendship, no strings attached. Not trying to. It was just a plain friendship.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I really...
Until it wasn't.
Until it wasn't. Now, I think there's so many things I love about that. I love how like organic it was in a sense, where it was like no one was, you weren't sort of like posturing. It was very much like this is a friendship. We're getting to know each other. However, when you realize that things started to change, you kind of responded to that and made a move. And I think that's why most people kind of run away a little bit. It's kind of like, I recognize that my feelings are changing a bit, but I don't want to mess up the friendship, or I don't want to basically. So I think a lot of it is like motivated by fear. But clearly that's something you guys did not see. You did not experience that fear.
Well, there's a part of thinking about it. You do think about it, but
Right.
it's more making a conscious effort as opposed to being afraid where you can't do anything.
So I would say, did it happen at the same time for you, both of you realizing that your feelings were changing, or was one person ahead of the other? Like, well, I guess we could come to you individually, but I guess, Tomi, when you sort of noticed that, okay, maybe I'm starting to like this babe, did you immediately feel like she was also in the same place, or like what was the sequence of the timing?
I think it was organic in that like we went from just being friends, just checking up, making sure everyone's fine, to we started having have you eaten conversations.
Right.
But even then as well, there was still like a hesitation to like, at least from my part, and I think when we then spoke like from her part as well, to then jump into like like let's start dating. So when the friendship became closer, and then there was a bit of like, okay, are we really doing this? And then somehow we just almost had the conversation at the same time, like, what are we?
What are we?
I think the timelines are very similar. And so personally, I sort of started to notice a shift. But naturally, you say like, oh, we've been friends for such a long time. Am I reading like more into it? But it also gave me time to sit and think like, oh, what does Tomi... And what do I want from a partner? Does he have those qualities? What does he want? And all of those things. And so at the point where we were then, because you get to a point, it's really hard to ignore, it's very obvious. Like things just really, the dynamics shifted, and they did happen organically, but you noticed the shift. I noticed it, he noticed it as well. And then we're able to sort of have those conversations about it. But it meant that we'd sort of done like a bit of inner searching and thinking before we got to that point.
Right. So there was... What I'm hearing is that there was work that you both individually did before like kind of approaching the conversation. And I feel like sometimes maybe we don't do that well enough, where it's like, oh, I like this person. Like I'm very attracted to them. I'm just going to go and ask them out straight away. So I feel like maybe part of the wisdom in it as well is even when you start to notice that, feelings are changing and stuff like that, taking the time to be like, okay, my feelings are saying this, but in reality, am I a good partner for this person? Because like, I think it's Tomi that always says about friendship and like dating. Tell us a bit more about that. You always say like friendship and dating, they are two different things. How do you say it?
Yeah, I think it's different. You could have, you might have someone that you think you're best friends with and you are like really close, but when you start to date someone, it's an entire, you see them in a different light, And then when you obviously get married, it's like, oh my God, it's completely different.
Yeah.
So I think for us, it was actually, we did there was the like feelings, like, you know, there was the feelings and there was the butterflies and all of that, right? But then thinking, actually, is this the right person for me? And am I the right person for them as well? And because we were friends, and obviously we talk about we've learned from bad experiences in the past, I was very mindful that like this was it. If we're actually going to go ahead on this journey, like we're going to see it through. Right, you know, so it was actually like being deliberate of like, yes, obviously I'm attracted to this person, and I feel like that's always where a lot of people, oh, I'm attracted to this person, then you jump and be like, I like you, you know.
I like you. Do you like me?
It's not a very wise thing to do. And then it is a bit selfish as well, because just because you like someone, like, do they even feel the same way? And what if they don't? Like, you can make it a bit uncomfortable for them in that friendship. So you need to take time to think like, okay, I know that I feel this way. Do they feel that way? Are they giving me any sort of like signs, or, you know, is anything changing in how why do I feel this way? You know, it's not fair to just, you know, because you like your friend, you decide, oh, I'm going to put it out there and say I like them. You know, you sort of need to take time and think about it and not be selfish. Also apply wisdom, because that's how people get a laugh. Sorry, people don't know what a laugh means. It's like when you ask someone something that you don't get.
Serve you breakfast.
Yeah, exactly. What's a nice English word to say?
Is there an English? This is the thing about like
Breakfast.
slang. Curved. Okay, I think it's like you get curved.
Yeah,
Is that what you guys will say? So it's just it's like, you know, freshies from Nigeria, they're like, what is that? So like, I think, if you get curved, like if somebody, I don't know, a lie is all that's coming to my mind, and I even want.
It's like when you get rejected, you know, that's how people get rejected. Yeah.
Bro, what's wrong with you?
Sorry, it's very Nigerian slang. So if you get rejected, people will be like, Ella. You got curved, basically. Wow, there's really no word for it. Anyway, but yeah, I love the thing about selfishness, because, well, I don't love selfishness, but I love what you said about selfishness, because I think if you think more about the other person, because part of the fear with this whole like friend zone thing is that ultimately people say that it goes one of both ways, and most times it does. Either you do kind of launch into a successful relationship, or you just lose the friendship. So it's kind of like it's a, you know, all or nothing. But I kind of feel like there's a middle ground. If you've done it well and you've thought about it, I don't think that you have to like completely lose the friendship. But we'll come to that. In terms of like the selfishness point, I want us to get a bit more into it. So, you know, I've been friends with this person for like ages, and then I realized that, you know, things are changing a little bit, but it's not immediate from them. I can't really gauge whether or not they're in the same place. How do I like, because obviously it didn't happen for you guys like that, but if somebody was in this situation, what would you say to them about how to like walk that journey? So you can give us from the kind of female's perspective, and then you can give us from the male perspective, like real practical tips in terms of how you navigate that. Either you're waiting or you're approaching the conversation. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think the beauty of friendship is that you have access to that person in a way that maybe if you were strangers and you just met someone and you're starting to date, you wouldn't necessarily have that level of access. So the beauty of friendship is that you actually get to see this person in the natural form, and you have presumably more time that you can spend with them. And so when you're having those thoughts, I would say this person's already in your life. You know, nothing drastically needs to change. It's just this time you're being intentional with asking yourself questions about, say, what you want, what they want. And you have the advantage of, I do sort of have access to this person in a way. I can just take the time to see, like, do we actually align with each other in that sense? You know, it doesn't necessarily need to be anything too drastic. It's just life happening as it would anything else. You know, it's like even when you're like, so between the same sex, like you meet someone and you're trying to decide, do we have similar values? Can we be friends? You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be a drastic conversation. You just spend more time with them, and naturally you sort of start to get, right, okay, they like this kind of things. They want this sort of thing out of life. You know, I want the same thing. Oh, I think we can be friends. You know, and I think it's the same with if you're already friends and then you're thinking about if a relationship can happen. And yeah, just taking the time, I think.
Yeah, it's great.
What do you think?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. I think like when you're friends with someone, you have their data sets. You pretty much know them, you know. Like, I mean, one of my friends, like, since I've known her, she has always wanted to date someone that was like 6'3" and 6'4" and above. Right? Just as in to the point where like that is, at this point, you can actually say like that is something that is important to her. And I think as a friend, if say I was catching feelings and unfortunately I'm just 5.
You know.
I'm 6'4". And then like if I was catching things and I went to go and meet her and be like, babe, how far? Like, I think that is being selfish, because like that's something that actually, since you've known her, you've known that she's turned down people that were shorter, and that's something that's important to her.
That's a very good example.
It's funny because like initially, I remember when we met when we were young, I thought this was funny because it was quite important. But actually, like we talk about not being selfish, right? If you're friends with someone and it might be something you don't agree with, but you know that this is something that like, the person, I mean, this is an attraction, but there might be deeper things like emotionally or what their disposition is about certain things. Like this is something that they feel important, like is very important to them. Like I think it's important for you to then weigh that to say, actually, am I able to support this person in this way? Is this something that I can give this person? And it's just like having almost like a list of like, you've been friends with this person. What are the most important things to them? Like what's their faith like? What's their, work life? What type of, and then saying, actually, can I support this person in this way? And then doing the same thing for yourself as well, because I think, again, I say like love is blind. Love really is blind, and it's like when you think you're attracted to someone, or when you think actually someone is giving you the emotional support that you need, you can turn a blind eye to like fundamentals that you would have seen otherwise. I remember like when we were doing counseling, like your pastor said love is blind, but marriage is an eye opener.
My pastor said that as well.
Because like what happens is you ignore those things when you're dating because you're attracted or there's something else that really draws you. But like when you then get married, you will still be attracted to the person, but it's no longer as, because you guys are now married, it's not the highest thing, or you then start to say that this person, when they brush the toothpaste.
Press the toothpaste on the middle. I don't know why that thing bothers people so much.
Hey, so that's why it's important as friends, because as friends you have that data, you have access to who the person is, and that data set in quotes is like actually do that analysis before, but yeah.
No, that's really great. And I think what I'm hearing as well is that friendship should be an advantage. It shouldn't be like a deterrent. Like it should be the fact that, okay, we're steps ahead. Because I always say, what is dating? It's gathering data. It's you trying to get to know that person. But I feel like with friendship, you've kind of done the work in a less pressured environment. Like it's not now like, oh, we're dressing up nice to now go on this date for me to get to know certain things. I already know these things. And then I can just use that information to make like informed choices about how I drive our relationship forward. So I think that's actually really great. And hopefully something that helps people to like reframe their mindset from like the friendship being a disadvantage, or, we are too close, we're already friends and this, that. But that no, actually we're close enough that I have a sense of who this person is, what they want, what they need, as well as what I need. And as you guys were speaking, it reminded me of a Bible verse that I actually read this morning, and it's in James chapter 4, verse 3. And it says, you ask God for something and do not receive it because you ask with wrong motives, out of selfishness or with an unrighteous agenda. And I was like, okay, if even God is saying like, in our pursuit of something, if our motives are not right and are not pure, even God will not give that thing to us, right? So even in our pursuit of relationship and as friends, I think I feel like that's probably the key thing that has stood out to me is in, if you like sanctifying your motives, like why are you pursuing this person? Because like you say, sometimes it's just very much like, well, I like them, I'm just going to ask them out. Or sometimes as well, maybe it's pressure. Yeah. Do you guys have any thoughts on maybe like certain things being motivated by pressure as opposed to like actually this is the right time, this is the right person, and that kind of stuff?
Yes, I mean, we didn't personally have that, but I know some people are in circles where...
Speak for yourself, or how do you know?
Sorry, I didn't personally have that, but I know some people are in circles where maybe because you're friends and you're a guy, girl, and people just sort of naturally think, oh, you guys are friends, like you should get together, It doesn't always work, and you should be honest enough with yourself to say like, well, I either like this person or it can work or it cannot work. So I think sometimes people might get together because of that sort of external pressure or what other people say to them. Maybe an older auntie or uncle is saying, but how about this person? How about that person? And as much as friendships can work, friendships don't always work, So it's, I suppose, that could be another reason why people are maybe pressure to get into things. Or maybe sometimes it's also fear. Like maybe you notice like your friend that has always been in your life, you've never acknowledged them as anything romantic, and all of a sudden they have a romantic interest, and you're like, oh, and then you're suddenly trying to get to them. That's a very really the verse that you read. It's not really pure motive. Like you're just doing that. Honestly, it's wickedness. Check your heart. Yeah. So I guess there's a wrong motives. But if you think back to everything that we've said, I genuinely think if you sit down and think, am I a good partner for this person? You already know what they want. You know what they need as well, because hopefully your friendships are at that level where, you know what your friends, maybe not very strong points are, what they're hoping would supplement, their own lives or whatever. And you don't meet it, like, so what's the point? Like what Tomi said, like someone wants someone that's 6'5", you're not that, like some things you can change, but you can't change that. Like, is it fair to ask them to come into a relationship with you knowing that that's a really important thing for them? So
yeah, no, I think that's really good. It's back to just don't be selfish, to be honest, because like if somebody has been quite clear about what they want, the fact that you just like them and you just want them in your life, I feel like you need to, because now you put them in a position where they could potentially lose a friendship that means a lot to them because you haven't been able to like really discipline yourself enough to not just like blurt it out just because. And I think it comes back to that point about intentionality, like the intentionality and the purity of your motives in the pursuit. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? Knowing what you know, very importantly, right? But I guess on a more like practical level, there's also, you have to fight the cringe. That's the other thing with this whole friendship thing that people say. Because 1 minute, this is like your brother. You actually don't care. This is the guy that will come and visit you, and you have your bonnet on. You have one rubbish t-shirt. You probably haven't even showered. You don't care. And then suddenly it's like, oh, it's giving, okay, like now I need to be, I care. I think that's always the first sign. Sometimes you're like, oh, why am I feeling like super self-conscious? How do you deal with the cringe, like the real emotions and like the whole, oh, this is different?
I don't know that I really had cringe moments. Though. My bonnet was still on every time.
That's not what I expected. I expected to say, yeah, because like my husband is amazing. It was easy. Like I said, my bonnet was...
Let me think about that. I remember like when it was the summer, it was a few summers ago, and we went out a few times, and I do remember maybe spending a bit more time thinking about how I looked. So I guess there is that. But it's not on the other like extreme where it's like, okay, yeah, now I have to be completely different around this person.
Yeah. But I think like there's that though. Like I do think that like once you start opening up to the idea of being like in a relationship with someone, you will naturally start to be more self-conscious. Right. Like I think that obviously people may be like adverse, like how would I entertain it? It's not just my friend. How can we start dating? But once you actually start like, this is not me just saying. It starts like almost like from your insides. When you start actually accepting that actually I'm going to start dating this person. I think I like this person. Very soon he will start giggling. You'll start like it comes from you accepting it first.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's great.
Yeah, it's definitely not as cringe, I don't think.
I feel like you guys have had a completely different experience from most people that I've kind of spoken to about the topic, which is fantastic, by the way. And I think it's very important to show that it can happen organically without cringe, and just like you guys can kind of transition. But I think fundamentally what you said is like doing the work prior, like you guys both individually thought about these things and and prayed. And this point of prayer is, I guess, where I kind of want us to go into next. What role did prayer play in you guys transitioning into more than friends?
I remember like one morning, it must have been like a Saturday morning, and I was just like, I woke up in the morning and I was thinking about Tomi. So at this point, like we hadn't had the official conversation about anything, but this is sort of part of that transition where you're starting to notice things are different. And I remember just journaling, and I don't even journal a lot, but like that day I just sat down, I was like, I'm going to write to God exactly about how I feel. And I guess that was sort of where the prayer about him specifically started. So as Christians, obviously we think that whoever you get married to, your life partner, to be honest, even if you're not a Christian, it's still an important thing. Like you're pretty much merging your life with someone. And so just saying to God, like, this is how I feel, because before him, I'd said to God, like, this is what I want in a partner. And I feel like, God was sort of preparing me for all of those things. So yeah, prayer was definitely important. It was really important to me that I felt like I had peace from God about him, about our relationship, if we're going to sort of move that way. Yeah. And I think also in terms of like the values that we had, that we carried through from friendship to dating, it was important that I could talk to God about whatever it was that we were doing, if that makes sense. Yeah.
How about you, Tomi?
Yeah, man. I definitely think prayer is important. I'm not going to come and say like I prayed every day about like Madam. But I think for me it was more about like, because we had the values, the value was really important, because we'd already said actually we had, when we were talking, we put God at the center of our relationship. And I felt very strongly that like this was the person that God wanted me to marry. You know, so like I was convinced, and it was just like it felt like I mean, our lives, our experiences, and everything was almost like it was me leading up to us ending up together. So, yeah, that kind of knowing that, like, I feel like our relationship was God's intent for us, actually made it easy. You know, I wasn't actually stressed. I wasn't worried. I mean, up until after we got married, but that's for another day.
I remember that story.
I wasn't worried. I actually felt at peace, you know, because I felt like this was God's plan for us.
So would you say then that like peace was one of the major confirmations
Oh, yeah.
for you?
100%. 100%.
What was like your major confirmation and that kind of made you know
I think
that?
fruits of the spirit too. You know, someone can say that they're a Christian, but how do they live? And again, going back to the advantages of friendship, this is something that you should have had the chance to see, like before you even get to the point where love starts to blind you, you know. And when I did get to the point where I realized my feelings were changing, I was even more intentional at looking at those fruits. You know, so I don't think that I had one confirmatory sign. It was a continuous thing. When we have conversations, what is he prioritizing? You know, when I listen to him talk about his life, what is he prioritizing? Who does he go to for advice? You know, is he living a godly? I mean, that was the most important thing. You know, that was my number one single criteria, to be honest. And then obviously there are other things in the middle, like do we get along? You know, am I attracted to him? All of those things. But the very first thing was very much, is he a person who has a heart after God? And he's not just saying it in words, he's actually living it out, you know. So it couldn't have happened. I don't think our story ever could have happened without God, because it's interesting how early we met, but I really don't, until we both got to a certain point with our walks with God and maturity in faith, I don't think that we could have, I don't think we could ever have gotten to this point, you know. So it's really something that it feels light to even say I credit it to God. It's really something that he designed.
Oh, I love
feel,
that.
yeah.
I actually love that so much. Anyway, there's so much more to unpack, as you guys already know. So we'll have to continue this in part 2. So we'll see you guys in the next half of the conversation. Bye.
Hi, guys. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe.